It's another episode of Donnie's Disposals. I am your host, Coach Donnie Hess here, back with another AFL review. And joining me today from the Great North, by way of South Australia, it is the man, the myth, the legend that is Mick Aussie. Mick, thank you for joining me, sir.
Yeah, good to be back on, and thought I'd wear my Ottawa Swans jersey again to give you a bit of love for your Sydney Swans. Man, they need it. They're struggling, but I think they might come good.
Yeah, the one thing is, I think the bye has landed perfectly for Sydney with the fact that there are rumors that both Dane Rampy and potentially even Joel Armati could be back for this round on Thursday against St. Kilda. So I'm super happy. But we need to talk about round 11, which saw some quite interesting and some really, really good footy. So before we jump into game by game breakdown, quick thoughts on round 11.
Round 12, wasn't it?
Or round 12. My apologies. Round 12.
My quick thoughts is I do my picks. So I did my picks, and then I listened to the legend, one of the greatest players of all time from South Australia, North Melbourne legend, AFL legend, VFL, Malcolm Blight. So I thought, okay, good. I picked the same as Blighty. I wasn't sure on the Crows and Suns, went back and forward on that about 10 times. So Blighty and I, we both went 4-3 last week because of some upsets. My girlfriend, this is true, I check her scores. She went 7-0. So it just shows a lot of us have no idea what's going on. She went for some roughies and got 7-0. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, there's a couple of scrappy ones. I know I tipped the Crows to somehow go up to TO Stadium and get the win there. I thought maybe the weather conditions the previous week might have got the Suns, but I guess the Suns. I agree with what I heard on one podcast I heard is they should really become the Darwin Suns because they seem to play Darwin quite well. So, but we'll break down each of these games coming up really quickly. Let's start with the Friday night footy match. Sees Melbourne v Carlton, and I'm gonna say it, Mick. Honestly, the D's get the win, but this was probably one of the most boring Friday night footies I have ever sat through because neither team were impressive. The D's get the win. But if I'm both coaches, I throw this tape in the bin because there's nothing to take out of it except for Vossi's continued struggles trying to get this Blues team on track.
Yeah, well, it's a big story, isn't it? I was lucky enough to be at round one and saw the Blues and Tigers draw, and everyone had a lot of hopes for the Carlton Blues. And I do like the coach Michael Voss, but wow, the rumours are starting now. But other than liking Michael Voss, I love the disharmony at Carlton because I haven't been a fan. When I grew up, they were the rich college boys and the rich club. And sure, I like Stephen Kernahan and Craig Bradley and Peter Motley, who sadly got injured in the car crash. I like those players from South Australia, but I haven't liked Carlton. And I kind of laugh because it's been like a 20-year rebuild and they're still in trouble. Like they are a mess. And Harry Mackay, oh my God, drives me nuts. These guys kicking around the corner from straight in front. They got to get coached by someone decent to get their technique right and then practice, practice, practice. I mean, I see he kicked 3 goals on the weekend, but my God, he has let that team down bad.
Yeah, I think this has been one of those where I don't know what to say because Harry there for a while just I mean he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn if you spotted it hit him that. And Charlie Curnow, he's kind of started to kind of take what Harry had issues with. So it's been I don't know. The delivery going forward has been atrocious. It's been never to their advantage. And with the D's, I don't know. They've always been a good team, but there's still something off about this team. And I don't think it's all Clayton Oliver. Like I don't think Clayton Oliver was the reason that this was just a day where neither team could really deliver. There were skill errors everywhere. This was just a game, honestly, that I wish I could forget unfortunately. So we'll jump over to your beloved South Australia, where Port Adelaide keep the run going as they put an absolute hiding on the Hawthorn Hawks, 151-96, a 55-point win. Port Adelaide kicking goals, and playing absolutely magnificent and making Kenny Hinkley look like an absolute genius.
Yeah, I did. I watched that first half, and that was absolutely what you'd call a clinic of great football, great goal kicking, great run on play. Finlayson was very good. I think he had 5 at half time. He's
Mhm.
been very good for him. And One talks about Butters and Rosie, and they really are absolutely stars of the game right now. I mean, big Charlie Dixon's out. You got Ollie Wines, you got Boat coming back. I mean, even Jonas can't get a game right now, but that's his own fault for getting reported a couple of times. So good on Kenny Hinkley. I'm not a fan of Port Adelaide, as you know, my arch rival, but
Mm-hmm.
they're looking really good. I got to hand it to them. And yeah, what a first half of football. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it was interesting. What was it? Is it Finlayson has five, Marshall has five, Junior Rioli has four. I mean, there's 14 goals, just those three themselves. Port Adelaide looking fantastic. I mean, Butters is putting himself potentially in a Brownlow medal contendership, which I think is absolutely fascinating to potentially see how that goes. It'll be fantastic to see how that goes. Can Kenny Hinkley keep it going? And then my thoughts is, does Port Adelaide change their mind before August and try to sign Kenny Hinkley, or do they continue to let this roll? Maybe thinking that the pressure keeps Kenny Hinkley coaching as well as he is going. So we jump out to Western Australia, where West Coast struggles continue. But I honestly, when watching this game, I don't think it was as bad as it could have been. Collingwood really could have put the absolute hurt on the West Coast Eagles. Only a 63-point win, 120-57. And the talk out of this game is Jordan DeGoey's bump that sees potentially at least 3 weeks on the sidelines.
Yeah, it was a bad one, wasn't it? He
Mhm.
really did go for his head. You just can't do that these days. So it was a bit of a brain cramp from De Goey, who's been very good and got his life back together. And good on him. I mean, he must have realised, oh, who do I want to play for? Collingwood, probably the biggest club in Melbourne, if not Australia, or go to St Kilda, where no one really gives a crap about. So good on him for getting his getting himself his life together and continuing to play for a massive club in Melbourne. But yeah, bad knock. He's in trouble for that. But Eagles, they are just the absolute mess, and they got no kids coming through hardly. I mean, they
Mhm.
they held on the extra year or two, hoping to go for a run, but then the injuries of the old players. They're in a lot of trouble for a lot of years unless they can hit the draft. Sure, they might knock off and hand off if they get the number one pick to get.
Oh, I think he froze. Hopefully he's still there. I will continue talking to see. It looks like Kim may have. There we go. He's back. Okay. We had a little bit of a freeze there. So you stopped when it came to Harley Reid. I'm not sure if it was your internet or mine. This is live podcasting, ladies and gentlemen. Sometimes it happens. So where you were is does West Coast look to maybe flip number one to get multiple picks to try to get more youth in because of, as you kind of said, a lot of older players that you're not going to be able to flip for draft picks of any significance.
No, I mean, I listen to a couple of boys from Perth as well because I get a bit sick of the Melbourne arrogance. So I like the Perth podcast. Barras and Quarter used to be Duff and Quarters. That's a very knowledgeable, good podcast. And Quarters seems to think they might get hand off the first round, first number one pick if they get it, but who knows? No one really knows.
Yeah, it'd definitely be interesting. And it's just for me, I look at it. The Jordan DeGoey thing is I keep hearing everybody say it was a split second decision. It was a split second decision. My only argument to this is the form that he went into that play with tells me it was not a split second decision. He planned on bumping in the first place, because if he was planning on tackling, because yes, the handball does happen just before DeGoey makes contact. But if you notice, DeGoey is not in a tackling motion, he's in a bumping motion. So I hear everybody yell split second decision. It wasn't a split second. He had made his mind up to bump in the first place. He was never going to
Yeah.
tackle. So this argument split second decision, I think is it's bollocks. It's rubbish. It's crap. He planned on hitting him. He just got him high. 3 weeks deserved. Probably should have got four. He'll get three. Does he deserve 2 months like Dom Sheet argued? Probably not. Do I think a few things were said that were probably said out of the heat of the moment? Yes. Do I agree that the remonstration of his teammates needed to go after it? Well, from what I kind of gathered, this thing was so fast and it was still in the middle of play. I don't think it's a possibility. I kind of hate the melees sometimes. They get really annoying because they take away from the game. I understand a little bit of the culture in the game, but I just, for me personally, I don't understand it. But I mean, to each their own. So I don't know. I just, for me, the Degoe thing is completely warranted. The split second decision, I think, is BS. I think he chose to bump. He chose to bump in the first place. He never even made a tackle. If he goes for the tackle and tackles him, all he gives up is a free kick, and he can play for King's birthday this week because he decided the bump was the better option. Now he's not playing this week. So that's his own personal decision. No offense to his personality. I don't really care, but I mean, he got what he deserved, if I'm being 100% honest. So I will
Yeah,
go ahead.
and this is what annoyed me is the fact that Dom Sheed apologized today. What a load of rubbish. You should never have to apologize in life when you tell the absolute truth. So he weakened. I couldn't believe it. What's wrong with this world these days? He says the truth and then apologize. That's pathetic. He should have never apologized for what he said because he told 100% truth. And back to bumping, like, I wasn't good at doing a hip and shoulder. There was only a few players that I could name right now. Malcolm McGrath, Darren Clem, to name a couple I played with. They really knew how to line a player up and hip and shoulder properly because it is a real art. So guys just got to forget about doing it completely because it's not easy to do it in the right way and get them below the head anyway. So
Mhm.
it's just got to be out of the game, you know.
Yeah, there's still room for the hip and shoulder. It's got to be side on. It can't be front and front on. You just can't bump. You got to try to make the tackle. I know it doesn't make a lot of
Yeah.
sense, but you got to. So we'll move up tomorrow to. I can't even remember where this game was played between Marvel Stadium. I thought it was Marvel, just to be sure. As the Cats get a rebounding win over the Doggies, 97-75. A great game for the Cats, finding a way to get a win over a Doggies team that was starting to kind of find some form.
Yeah, well, I'd back a dog in a fight against a cat anytime, but cats, good on them for winning. That they would have lost four in a row for the first time in many years. So that was a big win. I didn't pick that. But the trouble is with the dogs, I think they got too many tall forwards. And I couldn't believe they went after Rory Lobb in the first place. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't mind Rory Lobb. He had a good year at the Dockers last year. But you got Hagen, you got Norton, you got big fellas already in the forward lines. I just found a very strange one to go after to get Rory Lobb. And the blonde haired pretty boy's not doing too well. They even lined him up on a wing on the weekend. So, but I think they'll bounce back. They got good on ballers, and English is playing great. Liberatore's back playing well. I'm a big fan of Adam Treloar. So I think the doggies will be okay and make the 8, but they won't want to relax too much. They want to start getting moving consistently.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. My thing is Timmy English is stamping himself as a very good shot to be the All Australian ruckman this year. I think the only one really I think that could compete with him for it is Sean Darcy from the Fremantle Dockers. But I mean, a couple of years ago, Timmy English, nobody thought he could ever be a ruckman. So the doggies have got a good one. I agree with you. Plus, they also had Josh Bruce, who you didn't just say who was forward too. So I really never understood the law bring in. I don't think it added anything. In fact, I said to a few Fremantle Dockers friends of mine, I think Lob was an addition via subtraction because I think he was really a distraction. He wasn't a consistent forward for me. I don't know personally. I've never really seen the big hype on Lob myself. So let's go up to TO Stadium in Darwin. Unfortunately, sir, your beloved Crows fall just a little bit short to a pesky and dangerous Crow Suns team on their day as the Suns get a 25-point win, 112-87 up at the top end. I mean, it's hard not to argue the Suns team on their day are really, really dangerous and really, really talented when they want to be.
Yeah, good on them. I'm a fan. I hope they keep going well. Upset they beat my favourite team, the Crows. The Crows are up by about 35 points, and I believe the Suns kicked 9 goals straight. And they keep saying the ball got very slippery and humid after half time, but I've played up there around Christmas time, January and February. And it's very humid. It really is. But I didn't believe. I was a bit shocked that it's still so humid this time of year. Not like January and February before the rain come. It's crazy up there in January and December. Like so humid. It's unbelievable. But yeah, I like watching the games up there, and the Crows should have gone up there a few days earlier, I believe. But I get a bit annoyed with some of their celebrations, like Rankin and Rochelle. Sure, if you want to celebrate, that's fine. But then you put a little target on your back. And when I used to play, you never do that because then it just drives the opposition to, oh, I'm going to get that guy for celebrating. It's hard enough as it is without someone wanting to go at you even harder. So cut out the celebrations, I think, because then it can backfire on you.
Yeah, Matty Rowell and the Suns team again. I hope they can keep this up because I think Stewie Doo is a fantastic coach. I think this team has the ability to make finals if they can get on the right run. So it'll be fun to
Yeah.
watch this Suns team for sure. I think the Crows are still in the finals hunt, but this dented them. This dented their confidence just the littlest bit. So we jump to the last two games. The both I have to say this. I watched both of these games in their entirety that night on Saturday night into Sunday for me because these were absolutely two impeccable games, both by under a goal. We'll start off at Giant Stadium where the Tigers go up to New South Wales and find a way to get a win 110-104 in an absolutely scintillating game. Pickett's goal late, absolutely magnificent. Tigers get a win for their caretaker coach as Damian Hardwick watches on from Vegas, if I remember correctly.
Well, I got that one wrong. I picked the Giants. I get confused with green and green. One's got the E on the end. Toby's a beauty, though, isn't he? Eh? Love watching that guy. I thought he was a little smart ass when he first started, but he really runs that team. And they reckon Whitfield Swans might be chasing him, but yeah, a couple of teams that I doubt very, very much if they'll make the eight. So not a fan of the Tigers, as you know, but I kind of hope the Giants do okay. But nah, they won't make the eight.
Yeah, I think both teams are kind of just trying to get themselves settled into a nice spot come draft time, trying to find some positivity as the season goes on. A great game, a little bit iffy. The footing, I saw so many players falling over in this game, so that was the one thing that frustrated me was the footing was absolutely atrocious at times, but scintillating end to it with Pickett's putting that one home with only about a minute left. And then we go back down to Marvel Stadium as Essendon find a way to get a win over North Melbourne. And is it me? But I honestly believe this. I think Brett Ratton is getting his second chance, and he's doing very, very well with it with a North team that is incredibly, incredibly difficult to coach because this is a team that's in forever flux because everybody thought Clarko was going to coach. Now Clarko is buggered off, and we don't know if he's ever going to come back. And honestly, I love this young midfield, the Sheezels, the Wardlaws, the Jai Simpkins. Once LDU comes back, I think they've got a great core midfield and some great players and Larkey up front. They just fell a little bit short to an Essendon team that just wanted it a tiny bit more. But some good positive things, I think, for North, surprisingly, in this game.
Yeah, good on Ratton. He was a damn good player himself. Then he coached Carlton, then St Kilda. So good on him. But yeah, the Clarkson thing, wow, we never know what's going to happen there. We could spend an hour talking on that, but I don't want to.
Neither do I.
Furha, he's a beauty, isn't he?
Mhm.
Goldstein's still going all right. McDonald, they got some pieces, absolutely. And Cheezel,
Mhm.
however you say his name, he's a good young rookie. But the Bombers, I don't know, the Bombers are up and down too. It's still a team I can't trust. I can trust them a little bit more this year with the new coach Scott, but Merritt's a beauty and Hempel's back. Martin, the young fella from Western Australia, he's having a good second year, but I just can't trust the Bombers still yet. So they might drop out of the eight, but I believe they got a fairly easy a draw coming
Mhm.
home compared to some of the other teams. So be
Two West
interesting to
Coast
see if
matchups
they
and a
do make the eight.
two West Coast matchups and a North matchup in their run home. So
Wow.
they've got some easy beats on for so Essendon may make the finals, but the question is, can they break that drought of winning a final is the biggest question on that again. Dyson Heppel, I think, has found his kind of niche after being taken out of the midfield and that halfback line. And Zach Merritt had an incredible first quarter. I think he kicked 2 goals and had 16 disposals just in the first quarter alone. Absolutely incredible game there. And then Draper and his second in command for the ruck for Essendon, I think are going to be fun to watch. Their characters, which I got to admit, I genuinely appreciate some of the things that Essendon does. I agree with you. I still think they're still a little fluctuate. They still have their moments of brain fades defensively, which they didn't have those first few rounds when they were playing really, really well. So we'll have to see how their season goes. But Essendon is a team I'm going to keep an eye on because you just never know what type of team you're going to get
Yeah.
each and every round. So with four teams on the bye, that is the 7 games that we had for this last round. So we jump to what I call my burning questions of the week. And I'm interested for this, Mick, because this year there's 4 bye rounds. There's 4 rounds where there's teams with byes. So with multiple weeks, uh, your thoughts on this? Because I've heard people say, well, why don't we just take one full week off? And I've heard even the discussions of how they have the midseason draft about going to what they call a midseason trade period, to where all the teams would take a week off and you'd kind of have like a trade deadline like we have over here in North America with most of the US based sports, the hockeys, the footballs, and let them do trades during that time period. So what are your thoughts on the multiple rounds of bye weeks, because it does kind of make the footy kind of stagnant, and it does make the ladder kind of insignificant for a few rounds.
I like it. I like the way they spread it out, similar to the NFL, and still we still get 7 or 6 or 8 games. I do like that, but the trade, the big difference between a trade period, say here in baseball or basketball or NFL, is multiple guys are making multiple millions of dollars, whereas in Australia, what you think it's right to have a young lad with a couple of kids and a wife, you think it's right to trade them to another city when those guys might only be on $300,000, $400,000. I mean, still nice money, but that's what I don't like about that. If it did come in, you're going to expect people to move their whole families, or a guy go away from their family for the last 3 months of the year. So no, I don't like that idea.
Okay. And again, to each his own. I've heard the idea thrown out. I know that the some of the state league fans that I chat with are not super impressed with the midseason draft, because sometimes the best players on some really good teams get drafted and taken away, and it kind of submarines their season a little bit. So
Yeah.
it's hard to kind of please everybody in this situation. But I was interested, as somebody that's very old school when it comes to the footy. What's your thoughts on that? So normally this is where we do question from Ross, but Ross is a little bit busy, unfortunately. So I've kind of ad-libbed this one really quickly, and we kind of discussed this a little bit with Carlton. Your thoughts on the fact that I'm hearing people talk that Voss is coaching for the rest of his kind of coaching career, as by the end of the season, Voss could be out of a job after only 2 years. For me, this is a little bit of a stretch, even for Carlton.
Well, I heard today that one of the well-known reporters in Australia, I forget his name right now, but he's even saying he's heard rumors that Voss could be in trouble if they lose this weekend. So,
Mhm.
the Carlton, the board and the money and the fancy pants is on the board. Who cares? No, I hope they stick with him. Haven't they had like 9 coaches in 20 years or something ridiculous
Something
like that?
ridiculous
So,
to that effect.
nah, it's not Voss's fault. It's Harry Mackay's fault. He can't kick goals. If he kicked goals, they could be in fourth position. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I mean, you look at you. I think last year kind of gave them a false sense of hope a little bit, because they were in the eight basically until one last kick late in the year by Elliott, and that put them out of the finals. That was literally it. So I don't know. There's something off. Their ball movement is atrocious. Their going forward has just been it's been without any creativity. It's always been very bland, very basic. There's no intrigue about it. They don't use what they do have. I mean, you've got Doherty, you've got Sod, you've got a couple of really good ball users with speed that can go through the corridor, and you don't use them. You just bomb it up to the big guys and hope to God they catch it. And when you have 3 defenders, that's almost impossible, even for Mackay and Kerno. So this has been a player's downfall. The coach can only do so much. He can't make the players make the kicks, and their skill errors have been way, way, way too numerous, for my opinion, for a professional team with the talent that they have. And it's interesting to just watch this team. And I agree with you. I think the fans have almost kind of come the own worst enemies because they put so much expectation on the season, and now because it's not working, they don't know how to handle it. And I've talked to a few Blues fans, and I'm asking like, what do you think? And there are some that are apoplectic. They have no idea what to do. There's some that they've been in depression for the last 2 or 3 weeks, especially after the Swans lost, because even I had said I went into that game with no confidence purely because of the fact the Swans had so many injuries in the back line. And then for them to put up the effort that they did at the SCG and the Swans to win, it's just has been a no-win situation in the Blues camp for sure. I guess I agree with you. I hope Voss doesn't go, but I worry that he's going to be he's going to be the scrap heap coach that's going to pay for his players' mistakes more than his coaching. And that's again personally, maybe it's the coach in me that I I I hate when coaches get axed for what I feel is a player issue, not a coaching issue. So,
Well, I have a guest for you. One of my mates would be a great guest for you. His name's Heath Buck, and he used to work for K Rock in Geelong, and he does his own podcast called My Blue Heaven. So it's fully on Carlton. He's a
mhm.
beauty. He came up here and we did the commentary for the USA versus Canada game in Edmonton in 2014, I think. So he would be a great guest for you because he knows Carlton inside out. Heath Buck's his name.
Awesome. Yeah, I actually I've got connected with the YouTube channel Blue Abroad and Terry DeGotti, and he is blue everything. He is blues everything. And him and I had a conversation on the Swans v Blues. And it was probably the most depressing episode I've ever done because neither of us were confident. Like one of us would give a compliment to the other team, the other would be just like, no. So
Yeah.
it was the most interesting podcast I've ever been in because both of us, I wasn't confident in the Swans at all. He wasn't confident in the Blues at all. It was the most interesting podcast I've ever been a part of. So we'll jump to a little bit more positivity here. Jump to the next question. And I'm excited for this because, as we said, the Suns have been a team that when they get going, a lot of people like to jump on as that second team. So with this win by the Suns, that's two in a row. They're still in, still in. Are finals possible for Stewie doing the Suns, or are they gonna let us down again in the second half of a season?
Well, I haven't studied their draw, but if they can win half or more of their home games, and they are getting hard to beat up there on the Gold Coast, absolutely they can. And looking at the ladder, well, they're equal eighth. Cats are on 24 and Suns are on 24, but with way worse percentage. And even your Swans, I mean, I don't think the Tigers or the Blues, but I don't like the way a lot of these media guys, even this time of year, they saying, "Oh, it's a must win, must win." What a load of crap! There's still what 12 games left. Sure, you
Mm-hmm.
don't want to slip out too much, and then you really got to go on a good roll. But absolutely, even down to the Swans, I'm not like I said, I'm not going to put the Tigers or maybe the Blues, but you get on a roll. Absolutely, you can. So
Mm-hmm.
I hope they do make it. I hope the Suns and the Crows go in and the Saints and the Bombers might come out. There you go. There's a bit of a prediction for them I'm giving
Well,
you.
well, here I'll add to it. Here's their run. Here's their run for the next 5 games. They play Carlton in round 14 since they have the bye week for this round of round 13. Carlton, Hawthorn, Collingwood, Port Adelaide, St. Kilda are their next 5 games. That gets us to round 18. 19 GWS, Brisbane Lions, Adelaide Crows, Sydney, Carlton again, and North Melbourne to end the season. So North Melbourne, last round of the year, potentially could see Gold Coast if they get a few wins. I mean, there's some wins there. I honestly, the way they're playing, I think they can beat Carlton. They should beat North Melbourne. Swans, Crows, Lions, iffy. Potentially, they should beat the Giants. St. Kilda, I think, is a very close game. They're probably not Port or Collingwood. Hawthorn, they should win. So I'm seeing 5 or 6 wins there. I think there's a possibility they may
Yeah,
need a little bit of help with some of those difficult matchups, but this it is definitely possible. I think the Suns can. They got to steal one. They got to steal one. Like get. They have to beat like the Saints, the Brisbane Lions, Adelaide, Sydney. You got to win at least a couple of those games there just to guarantee yourselves because you have those Carlton and North games that you should win. So I'm fascinated. The Suns team are going to be one I'm going to keep an eye on because on their day they can be quite deadly, especially with Lukosius going forward. Because that lanky little stinker can find a way to kick goals. He's kicked 5 in 2 games at Darwin, but unfortunately he leaves. He leaves the confines of TO Stadium. Can he keep his goal kicking boots on? For sure. So
Just hang on. I actually played with his dad, Robbie, big fella, massive fella, who's a bit lazy, but he did okay. So I think the young lad's got a bit better work ethic than his dad, and his dad wouldn't mind me saying that because he think he knew he was a bit lazy.
that's absolutely awesome. So that is going to do it for our burning question. So we get to the part where, unfortunately, I kind of take over the podcast a little bit. So I do my team of the week, and I know you had reached out to me because you wanted to know. So here's kind of my metrics. I tend to lean a little bit more on goal scoring and scoring involvements to kind of change this team of the week. I try to keep the guys in the positions that they are in normally to kind of keep it less like a all Australian team. Like I make sure there's wings in there and everything like that. So here is this round's team of the round. We'll start with the fullback line. Hawthorns Jarman Impey, Richmond's Noah Balta, and North's Ben Mackay. On the halfback line, we see Port Adelaide's Dan Houston, Western Bulldogs Caleb Daniels, and Collingwood's Nick Dacos. In the midfield, in on the wings, we see Hawthorns Carl Amon and Essendon's Nick Martin. In the center square, we see Dom Sheed of the West Coast Eagles, Gold Coast Noah Anderson, Essendon's Zach Merritt, and Rock GWS's Kieran Briggs. At the forward line, the half forward line, we see Essendon's Kyle Langford, Gold Coast Jack Lukosius, and Port Adelaide's Jeremy Finlayson. And the full forward line, we also see Port Adelaide's Todd Marshall, Hawthorn's Luke Bruce, and Richmond's Jack Rewalt. We jump to the bench where we see a defender, a ruckman, a midfielder, and a forward. I try to cover each of the lines. Defender Tom Stewart from the Geelong Cats. In the midfield, Collingwood's Mason Cox for the ruck. The midfielder, Richmond's Tim Taranto, and forward, Port Adelaide's Junior Rioli. So, real quick, I know it's kind of a little bit different than some people would say. Kind of your thoughts on the team of the week that I put together.
Yeah, very good, mate. You know your stuff. You must have thought about that a lot. So, uh, Caleb Daniels, he's a beauty, isn't he? Hey, Nick Dacos, of course, having a great year. Nick Martin, like we talked before, the young lad in his second year, I believe, for Essendon. Dom Sheed, wow, he's another injury-prone guy. Noah Anderson's having a great year,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. Merritt, of course. Lukosius, yeah, absolutely. But I want to spend a little bit of time. We got to talk about the big American, Mason Cox played his 100th game recently. He was a star on 60 Minutes to millions of people, the TV show in the US. So that's probably the best single event ever for Aussie rules football publicity in the USA. So Mason Cox, congratulations to him. Maybe I would have snuck Ben Keys in there for Adelaide. He had a great game up there, and he's a real goer. I love his endeavour, his heart. His kicking's got a little bit better. His kicking can let him down a bit, but might have snuck Ben Keys on the bench. But that's just me being a Crows fan.
Mm-hmm. Hey, I appreciate the feedback. I tell most people online when I do put it out, I said I appreciate feedback. I appreciate people, but I am going to ask questions on like who would you take out and why? Because I know Ben Keys has been moved up a little bit more forward this year, and with my forwards, I kind of tend to go goal scorers, so that's kind of how I do my metrics there. So I mean, I'd love to get him in because he is that good defensive forward that occasionally can kick goals and he can shift into the midfield, which I absolutely think is fantastic when you've got a half forward that can go into the guts for 5 or 6 bounces just to kind of let your midfielders get a break. So, but that's kind of why Benny didn't get in there. He had a really good game. Again, I think his move to the half forward line has been really, really good for the Crows because it's let a Dawson, a Laird, and some of their young midfielders get a shot in there and let Keys kind of get away from the heavy contact that is the midfield. I think it's actually preserved him. It may give him a couple more years on his career. So we jump to the power rankings, which is going off. Ross loves his power rankings and all of his podcasts. So I keep this as an homage to him. But I go with my power rankings by form. I don't go by how the top of the ladder looks, anything like that. So for my power rankings, here are the top five. At five, the Essendon Bombers. That is 3 in a row. They're starting to play better. I know they're inconsistent, but that's three in a row, and very few teams at this point have three wins in a row. Number four, the Brisbane Lions. Yes, they had a bye week, but they have won four in a row, continued there. Fremantle at number three, Collingwood at number two, and Port Adelaide continuing their win streak stays at the number one spot of the power rankings. Again, I go by form, not always by that. I know Collingwood is at top of the ladder by a game. I understand that, ladies and gentlemen, but Port Adelaide has the longest win streak in the entire AFL as we speak. Hard not to put them there until they get knocked off. I will keep them there. So that is going to do it for our power rankings. So we come to our favorite time of the podcast, always one I absolutely love, and that is tipping for this round 13. There will be 8 games this round with only 2 teams having the bye, with Geelong and Gold Coast taking a seat this round. So let's jump to it. Thursday night, only a little over 48 hours from as we are recording, Sydney Swans hosting the St. Kilda Saints at the SCG. Mick, who do you like in this one?
Hey, maybe I should get my girlfriend down here to do the tips. Oh, she heard me. I'm going to go with your Swans, mate. At home, I think the Saints have been a bit overrated, but they have played great football, and Ross Lyon does get a lot out of the players. Swans are favoured by 6.5, under over 158.5. I'll take the Swans and probably by a bit more than 6.5. But hey, tough game, could go either way.
Yeah, I love it. Sounds like Dean Rampy will be back. There's possibility of Joel Armati. I don't think Joel Armati will come back from a hamstring injury this quickly. I think they'll may give him a limited role in the VFL, but I think Dane Rampy gives the ability for Aaron Francis to be a fluctuate, to go forward or go back. Buddy Franklin has his 350th game, and he always tends to play really, really well in milestone games. I have Sydney in this one by 9. I think this is a close game. Again, Ross Lyon can play good defensive footy. We'll have to see. The ruck battle, I think, is going to be interesting to see. Can Tom Hickey at least neutralize Rowan Marshall a little bit and let his midfielders, like a Luke Parker, who is actually, I forgot, Luke Parker will be suspended for this game. So it'll be fascinating to see how Sydney responds to the loss of Luke Parker with Chad Warner and some of the midfielders for Sydney. I still think Sydney's just a little too strong there, but it'll be a really good game. We jump to Marvel Stadium as the Western Bulldogs host the Port Adelaide Power. I like the Power in this one. I love the way they're going. Western Bulldogs have a strong midfield, so I think this is going to be a fascinating one as to who can get the majority of the clearances. I think it'll be fascinating to see, can English get some dominance and get his midfielders like Libba and Bontempelli and Trelaw the ball and get a lot of pressure on that defensive line. Does Tom Jonas come back in for Port? We'll have to see. I still think Port just a little bit too strong, even without Charlie Dixon. So many weapons. I got the Port Adelaide Power in this one.
Yeah, I agree with you. They're 3.5 point favorite. They do play well at Marvel. But this has upset written over it as well, because we've seen the upsets the last few weeks, and Port have been on such a roll. They're due for a loss. But that said, they're just playing so well right now. You would think they would continue, because there's pressure on nearly every player except for a few to keep their spot in the team, because a few good players are in the reserve. So you would think that would get them over, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's an upset. I'll go for the Power just.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to see that. That one's going to be a really, really good one. So time out, my phone decided to. All right, we'll go to the Melbourne Cricket Ground as Hawthorn hosts the Brisbane Lions. Fascinating here. Brisbane, not the greatest record at the MCG, but playing a Hawthorn team that I think is still struggling. I know sometimes Brisbane, when they leave the confines of the Gabba, have a few struggles, but I don't think they struggle enough to take the Hawks down. I like the Lions in this one.
Yeah, I agree with a 25.5 point favorite. The Hawks might get a bit closer than that, but you would think the Lions would definitely want to win. They had a bye last week, I believe, so that should help them come up fresh, and the Hawks would be a bit shattered, even though they had a good second half. Sicily should be back, I believe, but
Mm-hmm.
Lions are looking good. But Danaher, he's up and down, eh? So they got to get him being more consistent. Lions to win, and I hope so.
Yeah. All right. Adelaide Oval. Adelaide Crows get their potential easy beat here as they face West Coast. I mean, do I have to ask? I think the Crows big on this one.
Yeah, they should. They play well at home, which disappointing they can't get their act together away from home, but that's a lot of young kids as well, obviously. So 55-point favorite. Yeah, each week the Eagles about 10-goal underdog. So Crow should get it done. Yeah, we've got some good players and just the young kids going hard, but away from home, they got to get a bit more consistent, as we said.
All right, way out to Perth, and Optus Stadium is Fremantle host the Richmond Tigers. Who do you like in this one?
Yeah, Dockers 15.5-point favorite. They've come good, haven't they? I would have
Mm-hmm.
put them in my power rankings too. Again, off a bye, that should help this time of year. You know, you like consistency, but you like to get that body rested up and treat your injuries. And their on ballers are playing well. Brayshaw, O'Meara, the Ruckman Darcy, of course, and what's that guy? The Amos, big fan of that young kid, Amos. He looks a real goods up on the half forward line. So
Mm-hmm.
Dockers to win quite easily, I think.
Yeah, I think Dockers win this one. It'll be fascinating to see can Luke Jackson continue it, and does Darcy get back from the injury? Because I know he left with a hamstring injury the previous game, and Jackson had a field day because of that, having to go into the ruck. But I think even without Darcy, I still think Fremantle too strong, especially considering Richmond played up in New South Wales, fly back home, and now all the way out to Perth. I think a little bit too much of an ask even for the Tigers team. All right, down to Bloodstone Arena and in Tassie as North Melbourne hosts the GWS Giants. And you know what? I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna pick North Melbourne in this one. They're at Bloodstone Arena down in Tassie. The Giants are iffy sometimes. They're an interesting team. They're not always consistent. And I like what Ratton is doing with this young team. I think they're scrappy. They played an Essendon team who's much higher on the ladder, very, very strong. I'm gonna go for it. Bloodstone Arena, a little bit of magic. I got the ruse.
Well, there's going to be an upset, you'd think, and I was going to pick the dogs as the upset, but I'm with you. I've picked the Roos as well as the upset. They play well in Tassie. They're 14.5-point underdog. I thought it would have been a bit closer than that. So take the Roos to cover that 14.5-point spread. Absolutely. That'd be one of my best bets. Not that I bet much, but I go on the show Friday, so I've got to give some bets. But I think you might be right. Let's take the Roos as a roughie because you would think some underdogs might get up the way it's been going the last few weeks.
It'll be interesting. Net to the MCG, as we said, the spluttering Carlton Blues take on an Essendon team, as you said, Mick, that is frustratingly inconsistent at times. Who do you like in this game? Because this isn't neither team spray gives me tons and tons of confidence in a tip here.
Yeah, well, there should be a decent crowd there. Both teams have big followings. Toss of the coin, really don't know, do we? But that said, I'm a Bombers fan before the Crows come in. They've upset me a few years later, but I'll take the Bombers to win, I think. Just can't trust the Blues, but Blues might get their act together soon. So, again, tough one to pick.
I'm gonna go with the Bombers in this one. I like Ridley's ability to intercept Mark, and if Carlton can't stop bombing it into the 50 with hope and prayers behind the footy, it's going to be another long day for the Blues. If they can find a way to get better disposal and give it to advantage of the big guys, I think they could have a field day against this shorter, not as physically dominant defensive line for Essendon. But they haven't shown me they can do it yet. So until they show me, I can't tip for the Blues right now. So I will tip the Bombers in this one. And we jump to it. The Big Freeze and the King's birthday game on Monday at the MCG, 12:20 a.m., at least my time, and 11:20 p.m. your time. This will be fascinating. Top of the table, near the top of the table clash, 3-1, Melbourne v Collingwood. Who do you like in this one?
Wow, what a great event that Big Freeze is down the slide. And the legend Jason Dunstall's in it this year.
Yeah,
He's
I
one of the
saw
best.
that.
He's one of the best people to listen to out of all the commentators, all the analysts. He's an absolute ripper, Jason Dunstall. Wow, tough game, isn't it? Two of the best players, one from each side, will be out. We're talking Jordan De Goey out for the Magpies and Clayton Oliver still out for the Demons. Wow, this is tough. I'm gonna go with the Magpies just because they're in better form, I think, than the Demons. But you don't want to have a mental letdown at all. But not one player should have any letdown because there'll be a Very good crowd there. Should be a cracker of a game. I'll take the Magpies just because they're a bit better in form at the moment.
Yeah, I'm going to go for another upset. I'm going to go with the D's. I think Brody Grundy getting a chance at his old side that let him go. I think he gets them up. I know I've heard interviews with Max Gone that he's been talking about Grundy wants to take the first bounce. I like that positive momentum, and I'm hearing rumors Clayton Oliver may actually be back. It has
Oh,
not been confirmed, but they said
interesting.
if there's a good week of training, Clary Oliver could be back for the D's, which I think would be a nice addition against a team, like I said, that's just this run and gun, fast going Collingwood team. If you get a bull inside that can kind of take away the run and gun of the Collingwood, I think there's a possibility. I'm going to go with the upset here. I like the D's. I think they've been able to keep an eye on this Pies team. If you can put a little pressure on them, sometimes they fold a little bit in the midfield. I'm going to go with the D's in this one, but I think this is razor close. I think we have another one that comes down late to the fourth quarter. We'll have to see, but it is going to be a magnificent King's birthday and Big Freeze game. Cannot wait for it. Fantastic. What a way to end the podcast talking about that, sir. Absolutely magnificent round of footy. Cannot wait for it. Before we get off again, I want to give you that opportunity again. I see the brilliant ad products in the back with the Mick Aussie TV right behind you there. Again, for anybody that has not seen it, that wants to keep an eye on your stuff, let them know how to find a little bit of Mick Aussie online and YouTube and all the different places we can hear your wonderful stuff.
Well, first of all, I thought, what's he saying? King's birthday, of course, ever since I've been alive, it's been the Queen's birthday holiday. But yeah, it's King Charlie, eh? Anyway, everyone gets a holiday in Australia because we're still more connected to England, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a couple of big gigs. My biggest gig relevant to AFL is obviously Friday nights at 8:10 Eastern on New York-based Sports Grid TV, Sirius XM 159 with Gabe Morency. And Gabe's followed the AFL. We've been talking AFL picks for about 6 years. He likes his gambling, so he sits up Friday nights and watches the games. But hey, we cover the AFL, and we're probably I believe we're the only two regular each week talking AFL on USA TV. So that's a lot of fun. And yeah, MickAussie.tv's got all those past shows on there. I'm doing a cricket show as well up here, and CFL starting. So yeah, lots going on, mate.
Yeah, definitely for sure, and always great. And I love that you got into the cricket. We I know before we got started, we talked a little bit of the World Test Series. Cannot wait for that getting started tomorrow. So really fascinated on that. So that is going to do it for another episode of Donnie's Disposals. Again, keep an eye out. More stuff coming again. Cover the sample, waffle, VFL, and keep an eye out. I've got some player interviews lined up very, very soon that I cannot wait to be able to share with you on the show. So that's going to do it. Have a wonderful evening, day, whatever it is when you're listening to this. Be back with another episode of Donnie's Disposal.
Here's the song. Arms in the air. Donnie's gone through. Jamie Elliott has won the game of footy for this famous club. The legend becomes immortal. Smith at his pocket, Kemp